Thanks for coming. This is another episode of In the Field. I'm here talking with Guitarist L.A. Jenkins, who hails from Columbus, Ohio, and has just completed performance at the 12th Annual Outstanding Music Summit. And so we're here talking with L.A. before he heads back to Columbus. Thanks for talking with me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I've been enjoying it here.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
So tell me, was guitar your first instrument?
It is my first instrument and my only instrument.
Oh, okay.
Yes, was my first, and I haven't pretty much just battled with that for the last 30 years.
So how old were you when you first started?
I started after I graduated from high school, and so I was about 18, 19, so I got a little late start. And I've always enjoyed music, but popular music in the Midwest was not really my cup of tea, and I hadn't been exposed to anything else. So, it was just kind of a passing thing until one day, I ran across the next door neighbor and invited me over to listen to some music, and he played for me Sun Ra. Yes.
How old were you then?
I was about 18, 19.
Okay.
And then he also played the Chicago Art Ensemble. Live in Berlin. I never forget it. It was the Black album where they were singing the little cafe thing. It's really neat. So I was hooked at that point. I think harmonically, even though I didn't know what that word meant back then, but I could actually hear this music. It was much more intriguing than the popular radio fare and the standard stuff that you heard. So it was I remember calling my grandmother that weekend and saying, I don't know why I picked guitar, but I said, I need a guitar. I want to learn to play guitar.
All right.
And so she said, sure, no problem. So I went to Penny's and brought me a guitar and amp.
So it was an electric guitar?
Yes.
Yeah.
335 copy, model red. I never forget it. It was my pride and joy. It was strange because I had this kind of whole ideal mapped out even before I picked up the guitar, and I knew that I wanted the music to be completely wholly itself. I wanted to be independent, from structural constraints and stuff, even back then. So I remember taking my first guitar lesson, and I said, well, I think that was enough.
Right, okay.
After my first guitar lesson, I figured I had enough instruction and stuff,
right.
For guitar, because I knew that I wanted to map something, out for myself. Now, a little bit later when I was in college and stuff, I went to school of music, and studied theory and composition. And that was all theoretical, so I really enjoyed that. It wasn't so much application, so I wasn't sitting there learning, scales and, modes and those types of things and stuff, And, it's kind of a deficit for some people like myself living in the Midwest, because you really don't have a strong culture, of creative music. Now, it exists, but you kind of have to find it. It doesn't find you.
Right.
And so if you're missing it, you never know a Sarah could be right next door to you, So it has a tendency to be a little insular also, So it tries to project itself outward, but at the same time it's trying to, maintain certain boundaries and stuff. So in the 80s and stuff, I moved to New York for a while.
Oh, okay.
And stayed in the East Village, and that was just, a wonderful experience. The only thing was that there was so much stuff going on, and just so many different things happening simultaneously that, it was hard for a person that didn't have any, guidelines, to, really connect to anything. Even though I found that a lot of people were very open, very, supportive, and it kind of gave me, the desire to go on, and continue playing and stuff. So.
How long were you in New York for?
I was there a little less than about 8 or 9 months. And winter was fast approaching.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I had just came through the early spring that prior that year. And it was no fun, but I was a little bit better situated at the beginning than I was when the next winter was coming.
I see.
Yeah, I was, like most artists and most musicians, I was just, one place, to hang my hat, in order of making it and stuff, because it's a situation where you have to, you have to stay the course,
Yeah.
and the problem is that if you're, new to the area, first generation, or you have no family or support around you, it's very difficult, to be established unless you have other means like a gainful employment, right, or those types of things. And I didn't have any of those constructs, so I returned to Ohio and returned to Columbus, and just started to endeavor over the next several years of study. Studying microtonal music, intergalactic, compositions and stuff like that, and just doing a lot of reading. Got to remember this was the '80s, so this was pre-internet.
Oh, sure.
No
right.
cell phones.
Right.
So it was very. A lot of people may have a hard time understanding today, but it's very easy to be an artist and be isolated.
Sure.
Not like it is today.
But you were listening too to
Oh,
recordings?
yes. I mean, I spent, on campus, Ohio State University, we had a place called Singing Dogs. Yeah. And I spent every waking hour, I thought I would have to have an intervention for a while because I was at the record store, waiting for,
right.
the next record from New York to come out,
right.
or from Chicago, and those were the two primary areas where music came from, a lot of people weren't, there was no DIY, to that extent where it was far and few in between. So the way you supplemented was that you read magazines, you read Downbeat, you read, Rolling Stone, you read The Village Voice, and those types of things in order to try to glean information, and try to connect a sense of community, by journal reading and stuff, So it was, strictly, like I said, pretty isolated time, and so you struck out where you could, and for me, I found refuge, in jazz, rock, fusion, and rock and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And so that supplemented my need, to perform and play with other artists and musicians for about a decade, and it was fulfilling because I learned a lot of things. I learned, especially doing more adventurous type rocks, Zappa. To a certain extent, the early Chicago stuff was very intriguing and stuff, especially with the horn arrangements, Cold Blood and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. These bands were very, very interesting because they, for guitars, gave me a palette to really work from a chordal standpoint that was basically beyond just C, D, and G. Right. So that was my learning.
Okay. So you play in bands in Columbus in that genre, those various genres.
Right. And then when John McLaughlin and the fusion thing came out, that was extended. So we started studying Stravinsky, and these, these types of, cause, of individuals, because this is where McLaughlin and all these folks were pulling their knowledge from. Chick Corea, Course Miles. Even though Miles was just, he was his own.
Well, that's right, yeah.
So, and he was probably the biggest influence because I discovered his 70s recording on the corner of Big Fun, where he was doing, what I want to do was, this very funky avant-garde, devil be care with, what people think of what they do. I'm going to do what I want to do. Beautiful, it inspired me and it, kept me going, So, just kind of fast forward, 10 years later, I'm working with a producer and an engineer that I'm still working with today. We've been together for about 25 years and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so we have, a real friendship, and they help, sustain me, in a lot of different ways and stuff, when I know that I need to do a recording or if I need this or that, they're there to help me with it and stuff. So we have a real, relationship, and a friendship. So, and interesting because, as you fast forward, I can remember 2000, was still technologically, challenging, for a lot of artists and a lot of musicians.
Yeah, CDs were just finally in their heyday.
Yes.
It was still relatively expensive to press.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another good point that you bring up there, was that, projects back in those days, was usually meant you mortgage the house or something.
Right.
It wasn't like, you open up a laptop in your bedroom and start to record, studio time back in the 80s ranged from $65 to $300 an hour, depending on where you were at. Then we were working in an analog field, and so there were certain inherent problems, especially with noise and degeneration of the music itself. So, you spend a lot of time in the studio, working on one project. A lot of people, I think, can do by choice what it used to take us, a year to do, and we didn't have a choice. Because you were always recording one part and then regrouping, and getting more funds, more money, in order to subsidize the rest of the project. And so you did in the stages and stuff.
Right.
And so sometimes, there may be down times of 3 or 4 months, before you're actually back in the studio. So,
sure. And
you had to keep that continuity and that flow, and that same energy was, extremely difficult to do,
Yeah.
And then, you had kind of a funny thing right now where people are putting music back on cassette tapes and vinyl and stuff.
That's very true. Yeah.
Back then, it was like, the end of a long trip that a lot of times didn't fulfill you, because it's hard to explain for people that haven't been in the studio, but there's a quantitative difference in sound from the studio than what we were actually putting on that tape or on that vinyl.
Right.
And so we were still, in our mind's eye, still listening to what we heard in the studio. So a lot of times, we were a little disenfranchised, with the thought that it didn't really reach our expectations, So,
right.
But as I say, as I fast forward, I'm in a much better space now. We're all in a much better space. We're much more in a creative space.
Right. I was going to ask you, your current album that I've listened to, Clarity of the Peculiar, I don't hear like really intense the rock influence you were talking about. So obviously, and it's definitely ethereal. It's definitely exploratory. And you said some of your first listening experiences were like Sun Ra and the ACM. So obviously that's carried with you.
Of course.
From the very beginning. And the influences of the rock scene didn't necessarily detract from the influences of your early experiences. So I'm just wondering if there are other individuals that helped also keep that flame lit and which have moved you towards what you're doing currently now in terms of your recording and your experimentation.
Well, of course, I have a whole slew of number one guitars. Henry Kaiser, all the way to Robert Fripp, which is much more from the rock category, but Dr. Eugene Chadbourne is a favorite of mine. Derek Bailey, who I truly love, and one of the few guitar players I think I tried to emulate for about 5 minutes, because I really enjoyed what he was doing conceptually. And more importantly, I verged off into synthesized music and stuff. I love, Japanese, avant-garde, computer and electronic music and stuff. One of my earliest influences was Tomita, and Tomita had Snowflakes Are Dancing, very wonderful album and stuff. And and I, immersed myself, into the electronic avant-garde, and there, I found a place where I was able to deal with what I call conceptual polytonality. And so, and that is pretty much the approach I use on guitar today.
Yeah, I hear that. I heard that earlier this week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try to write from this wide palette, of sound. My basic approach, like I said, I'm all over the map as I go back to Herbie Hancock and McCoy Tyner when it comes to me approaching, ascending, descending chromatic type scales and chords and stuff, So I try to play like a piano player, and so some of the chords and stuff I use is if the band is playing, in a 4/4, I will play, behind the beat, in front of it, around it, and actually try to create this actual orb of actual space, around that and stuff, and that's why I love working with drummers that, can play, with time in and out, because that's what I feel most comfortable in. So I really, as a guitar player, say grab and cop a groove,
Right. Okay.
So, the album you just referenced and stuff, or my working trio that we play, is Martin Ripple, who plays trumpet and flugelhorn, and then Anthony Jacobs plays alien wind instrument, great trombone player, flute, and several other instruments and percussion.
You said alien wind instrument. Is that a particular actual instrument or an invention he created?
It is an invention that he created.
Okay.
He is an inventor. He is a very creative inventor and stuff.
That's great.
And so, we get together, several times during the year and stuff, and if it's nothing for us just to get in Tony's garage, it just makes some noise. It's a lot of fun and stuff now. It's funny because today, in 2013, Columbus is just like New York. It's just like Chicago because of the information that we're able to, derive from the world now.
So you have a community there.
We have a community, and we have an active community, and and this community feels a part, of the world now, as opposed to just saying I live in Columbus, So if I'm going to do something, I have to move out. So now
you don't have to do
that.
Yeah.
Case in point, that's how I met you. I know you, and and we were able to communicate and do it in an economically fashion. That does not preclude us from communicating. And sharing ideals.
That's right.
So
divergent styles coming together.
Yes, it's wonderful, and and the beauty of it is that it allows you to explore and to create because you're not held by the constraints that we were 15 or 20 years ago. Now we still worry about certain things that like marketing, those types of things, but I kind of leave that to smarter people than me. So and I just and I focus on the music, and the art, and and I always feel that I've been doing this long enough, that I will figure out a way, and and karma will make a way, for me to continue to do what I do.
So are you working on any future projects, or what's your direction? Near future.
Yeah, I'm always working, on pieces and stuff. It's really funny. My non-musical friends, are quite surprised when they ask me, what I'm listening to on the radio, and I said, well, I don't listen to music, because I'm always writing, always composing, always thinking about music, and so I can't have that, interference, as I would call it. Now, I pull out inspiration. If I come home in the evenings, I may pull me out a little Coltrane, for inspiration. And half an hour, 30 minutes, I cut that off, and I'm in my creative space, and I'm starting to write. So some of the things I'm working on right now, I'm working on my trio project. Phil Maneri is playing acoustic bass, and Hayden Holbrook is on drums, a recent graduate from Northern Colorado. And he just moved to Columbus and stuff. Young guy, and just a phenomenal drummer and stuff. And we have laid all the basic tracks and stuff. And so I'm in the process of doing some post-production work, and hopefully we'll have that completed, in the next few months. I'm also working and just completed a complete ambient series of experimental stuff that I've done with sound synthesis, Chris Murray, and did all sound samples and stuff. He sampled trains from Korea, those kinds of things and stuff. And so we completed that project. That's done, and I'm very excited about that because we spent a lot of time on that, and we worked pretty hard on it.
So he's doing all sampling.
With my guitar.
So with your guitar.
With my guitar.
I see.
Yeah, so we collaborated together and
excellent.
played. He used the sound as a collage and as music. And Chris is a fine drummer and stuff, so we do some of his percussion work also and stuff. And Then again, they Stop by Fear, which is the working group of myself and Martin and Tony. I'm in the process of scoring the music for that and stuff, and we're going to take probably just a little different approach on how we're going to record that. I think that we're probably going to use the studio a little bit more as a part of the process than what we normally do. You know, we normally come in and we play. You know, and so we're actually going to maybe score out some of the things and stuff, and maybe add a few more other components and pieces. You know, just to mix it up a little bit and stuff. You know, and I'm pretty sure that if we proceed with that process, we will probably turn around and you know, do something a little bit more free and stuff. You know, just to make sure that we're touching all bases. Also, I'd like to mention that I just finished a project with my fellow brother and Hassan Abdul. He's here with me today, and also in San Francisco, and he's on the Outside Festival. And we just did a project with a wonderful synthesis drummer and just all-around genius, Adam Smith.
Oh, great!
And so. That's completed, and so we're going to be looking at the next step on that and stuff.
Oh wow! So you have a lot of coals in the fire, and a lot of different projects.
Yes,
that's great. Well, wonderful.
Yeah, and I like to thank the Outside series and Summit for inviting me out and giving me a wonderful opportunity to come out here to San Francisco and in the Bay Area, and experience some very wonderful artists and musicians and stuff, and I guarantee this inspiration will sustain me, for the next several months, and I'll be able to come back and reference what I experienced here, and it's only going to inspire me.
Wonderful. Well, that's on that note, we'll say goodbye, and thank you so much for talking.
All right, again, thank you very much. All right.